Your furry sneezed and gave mine a cold.
You know, wow his mom upside down.
Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
The 1990s gave us dial-up internet, frosted tips, and a long list of genius inventions that aged about as well as milk left in the sun. For every Tamagotchi and Nintendo 64, there were products so baffling, you wonder if the creators were drunk, bored, or just actively trolling humanity. From soda that tasted like carbonated sadness to gadgets clunkier than a brick with buttons, the decade was a graveyard of bad ideas. So, join us today as we explore the 25 innovative products from the 1990s that failed miserably.
Today I've got Orbit's the drink. This came out in 1997.
Imagine someone blending a lava lamp with a bottle of Sprite and calling it a drink. Welcome to Orbit Soda, the 1997 innovation that confused more taste buds than it satisfied. Produced by the Clearly Food and Beverage Company of Canada, this so-called futuristic beverage came in wild fruit flavors and was packed with tiny gelatin balls suspended in liquid. The idea was to make soda interactive, but most people described it as drinking chunky cough syrup. Orbits looked cool on the shelf but tasted weirdly chemical, and once the novelty wore off, sales evaporated. By 1998, it was discontinued and joined the long list of 90s gimmicks that were more fun to look at than actually consume. Collectors still chase sealed bottles today, for nostalgia, not refreshment. If Orbits proved that people didn't want to drink floating blobs, could Zima convince them to sip on a clear beer instead?
Oh, Zima. Zima's good. Zima's a unique alcohol beverage.
If beer and soda had an awkward love child, it would be Zima, Coors' 1993 attempt at launching a clear malt beverage for the trendy crowd. Marketed as a lighter, hipper alternative to beer, Zima promised a crisp taste with fewer calories and a stylish image. Unfortunately, it mostly tasted like flat Sprite with a weird alcohol burn. While it initially gained attention and sold well in its first year, it quickly became a running joke, especially among men who saw it as too soft compared to beer. Coors tried rebranding with flavors and ads targeting women, but nothing saved it. By the early 2000s, Zima had fizzled out in the US, remembered more as a punchline than a party staple.
Can warm-blooded Americans taste the difference between Lay's Wow potato chips and their favorite chips?
What happens when you try to make potato chips healthy in the 90s? You get Wow chips, launched in 1998 by Frito-Lay, made with Olestra, a fat substitute that promised fewer calories without sacrificing flavor. At first, it sounded revolutionary. Guilt-free snacking. But reality had other plans. Olestra didn't digest like normal fat, and the side effects were infamous: stomach cramps, bloating, and other gastrointestinal symptoms. Despite selling over $300 million in its first year, word-of-mouth horror stories torpedoed its reputation. Nobody wanted chips that doubled as laxatives. By the early 2000s, Wow was rebranded as Light Chips, but the damage was done. Today, Wow chips live on as a legendary cautionary tale in food marketing disasters. If diet chips left a bad taste, could ready-to-drink coffee perk things up, or just put everyone to sleep?
They chose Maxwell House coffee.
Before Starbucks Frappuccinos conquered every gas station fridge, Maxwell House tried to beat them to the punch with Maxwell's ready-to-drink coffee in the early 90s. On paper, it sounded promising. Cold coffee in a ready-to-drink carton for on-the-go caffeine junkies. But the execution was more bitter than bold. Critics complained the flavor was watered down and chemical tasting, and it didn't carry the premium vibe coffee drinkers craved. Instead of cool and trendy, it came off as a lazy attempt to cash in on a growing market. Starbucks swooped in just a few years later and nailed the formula. Maxwell's version quietly vanished, leaving behind little more than a footnote about how even household names can miss the brewing trend entirely.
Is talking on the phone getting out of hand? Look out! You need phone relief.
Picture yourself holding a massive 90s cordless phone between your shoulder and ear for hours. Your neck cramps just imagining it, right? Enter the phone relief headset, a late-night infomercial sensation designed to free your hands by attaching a chunk of plastic to your phone. Essentially, a Velcro contraption with foam padding, it lets you strap the receiver to your head like some Frankenstein headset. Sure, it solved the problem of juggling calls while folding laundry, but it looked ridiculous and wasn't remotely comfortable. By the time sleeker, lightweight headsets and hands-free devices arrived, phone relief was already a laughingstock. Today, it's remembered less as an innovation and more as a textbook example of why, as seen on TV, didn't always mean practical.
Color shot! Did you know that at the heart of every blow pen is a real brush tip marker?
Ask any 90s kid who owned BLO pens, and they'll probably recall two things: colorful art projects and being lightheaded from blowing too hard. Marketed as a revolutionary art tool, BLO pens were felt-tip markers you inserted into a plastic tube, then blew air through to spray paint paper with stencils. The commercials promised professional-level airbrush art with just a puff of breath. In reality, they often left messy blobs of ink, sticky stencils, and annoyed parents. Worse, kids inhaled accidentally or ended up with blue spit. While they did enjoy a brief popularity boost thanks to TV ads and toy store hype, BLO pens never achieved staying power. They fizzled out by the early 2000s, remembered more for gimmick than genius. If messy BLO pens splattered your art, could colorful butterfly clips rescue your hairdo, or just tangle it worse?
There are so many different ways to use butterfly clips, but the classic way would...
Some 90s fashion trends deserved to stay dead, and butterfly clips are Exhibit A. These tiny, brightly colored plastic hair accessories exploded in popularity among preteens and teens, often worn in clusters all over the head. They were cheap, accessible, and everywhere: TV stars, pop idols, and school hallways alike. But here's the catch: they looked cute for about 5 minutes before hair slipped out. Clips broke, or tangles turned into hair-pulling nightmares. The fad burned hot through the late 90s but quickly cooled once sleeker hair trends took over. While butterfly clips occasionally resurface in nostalgic Y2K revivals, they're mostly remembered as the kind of innovative fashion item that felt fun at 12 but downright embarrassing in adulthood.
100 megabyte zip disk let me save, store, and take all my stuff with me.
In the mid-1990s, before USB flash drives and cloud storage, Iomega's zip drive was hailed as the future of data storage. Boasting 100 megabytes and later 250 megabytes and 750 megabytes of capacity, it dwarfed floppy disks and was marketed as essential for graphic designers, businesses, and home users with growing file sizes. At first, it seemed revolutionary: fast, portable, and convenient. But reliability issues soon plagued the product, most notoriously the click of death, where drives failed and data was lost forever. Add to that the steep price tag and rapid competition from writable CDs and DVDs, and zip drives quickly slid from hero to zero. By the early 2000s, they were obsolete, remembered mostly as expensive paperweights.
And that made all the difference.
When Apple unveiled the iMac G3 in 1998, its translucent teal plastic shell was like nothing else on the market. Gone were beige boxes. Suddenly, computers were fun, colorful, and modern. The all-in-one design, complete with a built-in handle, made it feel futuristic and stylish. However, behind the bold look was a mixed bag. The G3's lack of a floppy drive alienated users who still relied on them, and the Bondi blue color wasn't universally loved. Though it initially boosted Apple's image, the novelty wore thin as more practical machines caught up. The teal iMac became a quirky design icon but wasn't the long-term savior Apple hoped. Today, it's remembered as more of a collector's piece than a lasting innovation. Of course, what's the point of a pretty computer if it still screeched at you every time you went online? Cue the screeching modem sound, the unforgettable soundtrack of the 90s online experience. Dial-up internet, offered by providers like AOL and CompuServe, was the first taste of connectivity for millions. Using a standard phone line, it let users send emails, browse primitive websites, and enter chat rooms, but at a painful cost. Speeds crawled at 56 kilobits per second. Phone lines were tied up, and connections often dropped mid-download. Waiting minutes for a single image to load tested the patience of an entire generation. While it was groundbreaking at the time, broadband quickly made dial-up look prehistoric. By the early 2000s, it was nearly extinct. Dial-up is now mostly a meme-worthy memory of buffering pages and family fights over tying up the landline.
To the greatest sports performance shoe in the world, the Reebok Pump. Pump up!
In 1989, Reebok launched the Pump, but it was the early 90s when this innovative sneaker hit peak hype. The shoes had an inflatable chamber in the tongue, allowing wearers to pump air for a custom fit. The marketing was genius. Pro athletes wore them, commercials hyped them, and kids begged their parents for a pair. But the reality? They were bulky, overpriced around $170 when most sneakers were under $100, and the pump mechanism often broke. Competitors like Nike Air Jordan offered sleeker, more reliable options, leaving Reebok's gimmick in the dust. By the mid-1990s, the pump was more playground novelty than performance gear. Today, it's a nostalgic relic, remembered more for its advertising hype than athletic innovation.
You need to drink plenty of water to keep you hydrated throughout the day.
You'd think a beer company would know better than to sell plain water. But in 1990, Coors decided to bottle the same Rocky Mountain spring water they brewed with and market it as a premium beverage. The logic? If their water made great beer, surely people would pay for it straight. Spoiler, they didn't. Consumers were already buying Evian and Perrier, so Coors' version looked more like a desperate gimmick than a lifestyle brand. Worse, the company's association with alcohol confused buyers. Why would anyone reach for water from a beer company? Distribution fizzled quickly, and by 1992, the experiment was dead. Today, it's a textbook example of brand overreach and why not every resource is worth monetizing.
Legendary Harley Davidson.
Nothing says road warrior like leather jackets, roaring engines, and eau de cologne. At least, that's what Harley-Davidson thought in the mid-1990s when it tried to expand its brand into fragrance. The company launched a line of perfumes and colognes with packaging styled to appeal to bikers and fans. Unfortunately, the actual scents had little connection to the rugged Harley lifestyle, and consumers weren't buying the idea that freedom on the open road translated into a spritz from a bottle. The brand extension felt forced, and loyal Harley riders mocked it as unmasculine or unnecessary. Sales tanked, and the line was pulled not long after. The Harley perfume fiasco remains one of the strangest brand mismatches of the decade. If cologne couldn't capture the open road, could a headache-inducing console capture the future of gaming?
Enter the unique world of virtual gameplay with Nintendo Virtual Boy.
In 1995, Nintendo promised to revolutionize gaming with the Virtual Boy, the world's first portable 3D console. Instead, it became one of the company's most infamous failures. Designed as a tabletop headset with red and black graphics, it looked futuristic but delivered headaches, literally. The visuals were jarring, the system was heavy, and extended play often caused eye strain. The game library was weak, with fewer than 24 titles, and the $180 price tag felt steep compared to the far more popular Game Boy. Nintendo discontinued the Virtual Boy after less than a year, selling fewer than 1 million units worldwide. While it did pave the way for later experiments in 3D and VR, it remains a notorious misstep in gaming history.
Introducing Jeeves, the world's first internet butler. Just type in your question, and he promptly finds the answer.
Back when Google wasn't yet a household name, Ask Jeeves entered the scene in 1996 with a unique twist. You could type in a question in plain English, and their butler, Jeeves, would fetch the answer. It felt charming and futuristic at the time, especially for users intimidated by keyword-heavy searches. But underneath the polished branding, the search technology lagged behind competitors. Results were often irrelevant, slow, or drowned in ads, while Yahoo, and eventually Google delivered cleaner, faster, smarter results. By the early 2000s, Ask Jeeves became the butt of jokes rather than the butler of answers. Jeeves was quietly retired in 2006, and the service was rebranded as Ask.com, forever remembered as a quirky but underperforming search engine experiment.
Hey, Furby! Hey, Furby! Yeah?
Creepy toy or groundbreaking innovation. When Furby launched in 1998, it was pitched as the must-have interactive pet that learned to speak English over time. The owl-like robot chattered in its own Furbish language, blinked, and responded to touch, quickly becoming a holiday craze. Parents shelled out $30 to $40 and stores sold out everywhere. But the magic wore off fast. Kids realized Furby wasn't really learning. It was just pre-programmed. Worse, the toy's glowing eyes and midnight chatter creeped people out. Rumors even spread that the National Security Agency banned them from offices over security concerns. Sales crashed after the initial hype, and while Furby has seen occasional revivals, the original release is remembered as a classic example of overhyped 90s toy mania.
Faster, smarter. The Q-Cat, another innovative product to make your life easier.
If you ever wondered what peak.com foolishness looked like, the Q-Cat answers that question. Released in 1999, it was a cat-shaped barcode scanner given away free by magazines and Radio Shack. The idea? You'd scan special codes and print ads which would take you directly to a company's website. Sounds futuristic, right? Wrong. Nobody wanted to clutter their desks with a clunky scanner just to visit a URL they could type faster. Privacy concerns didn't help either. The Q-Cat secretly tracked users' scans. By 2001, the company behind it had lost tens of millions of dollars, and the device was quietly abandoned. Today, the Q-Cat is remembered as one of the most notorious tech flops of the internet bubble era. When Q-Cat failed to scan its way into homes, could Apple's clunky digital notepad finally organize our lives?
What is Newton? Newton is digital. Newton is personal.
Long before iPhones ruled the world, Apple tried to invent the personal digital assistant with the Newton Message Pad in 1993. It was sleek for its time, with a touchscreen stylus and features like note-taking, scheduling, and even handwriting recognition. Unfortunately, that last feature was a disaster. The Newton often misread handwriting, spawning jokes in newspapers and even a gag in The Simpsons. On top of that, it was bulky, expensive, and its battery life was poor. Consumers weren't ready to spend that much on a glitchy organizer when paper planners were cheaper and more reliable. Apple discontinued the Newton in 1998, but its DNA lived on. Steve Jobs later used its lessons to build the iPhone and iPad.
Arch Deluxe? Care to join us?
In 1996, McDonald's thought it could rebrand itself as a place for grown-up burgers and launched the Arch Deluxe with massive fanfare. Marketed as a sophisticated alternative to the Big Mac, it featured a quarter-pound patty, secret mustard mayo sauce, lettuce, tomato, and a potato bun. McDonald's spent over $100 million on ads, making it one of the most expensive product launches in fast food history. The problem? Adults didn't want to pay more for a fancier McDonald's burger, and kids, the chain's core audience, weren't interested. The Arch Deluxe flopped within a few years, quietly pulled from menus. Today, it's remembered as a cautionary tale about misreading customer expectations, proving that not even the Golden Arches can sell a classy burger to the masses.
Pepsi AM was a version of Pepsi that was meant to be drank during the morning hours.
In the early 90s, soda companies were desperate to claim a piece of the booming breakfast market. Pepsi's answer, Pepsi AM, launched in 1989 and marketed as a morning cola with more caffeine than regular Pepsi. It contained about 25% more caffeine, designed to compete with coffee and give consumers a fizzy alternative to their morning cup of joe. Sold up to the early months in 1990, the concept fell flat almost instantly. People who drank coffee weren't giving it up for cola, and soda fans didn't want to chug Pepsi at 7 a.m. By October 1990, the product was pulled, barely lasting a year. Today, Pepsi AM is remembered as one of the earliest and strangest attempts to make soda a breakfast beverage. Clear soda may have looked futuristic in the early 90s, but Crystal Pepsi proved that looks can't save taste. Introduced in 1992, the caffeine-free transparent cola was marketed as pure and clean, capitalizing on the health craze of the decade. Its Super Bowl ads and catchy Van Halen jingle made it a short-term sensation. But the flavor, described by many as flat, soapy, or Pepsi without the fun, disappointed drinkers. Within 2 years, sales nosedived and the product was discontinued by 1994. Pepsi tried a brief revival in the 2000s for nostalgia's sake, but it didn't last then either. Crystal Pepsi remains one of the most iconic product flops of the 90s, a great marketing gimmick with zero staying power. When soda marketing crashed, could a cartoon butler in a digital living room really save Microsoft newbies?
Bob is actually bills to friendly user interfaces and software integration.
When Microsoft released Bob in 1995, it was supposed to make computers friendlier for beginners. Instead, it became a punchline. The software replaced the standard Windows interface with a cartoon house, where applications appeared as objects, like a calendar on the wall or a checkbook on a desk. A yellow cartoon dog named Rover guided users around. Unfortunately, Bob was clunky, resource-heavy, and required Windows 3.1 or 95 with specs most home PCs didn't have. Tech-savvy users mocked its childish look, while novices found it confusing rather than helpful. It was discontinued within a year, becoming one of Microsoft's biggest embarrassments. Still, Bob has a quirky legacy. Its mascot, Rover, later appeared in Windows XP, a reminder that even failures leave paw prints. The 90s were a battleground for music formats, and Sony was convinced it had found the future with the mini-disc, launched in 1992. Roughly the size of a floppy disk, it offered better sound than cassettes, rewritability unlike CDs, and a compact design perfect for portable players. On paper, it seemed brilliant. In practice, the format was too expensive, and CDs were already dominating shelves worldwide. Few music labels embraced mini-disc, and consumers weren't interested in buying pricey players plus new media when CDs and, soon, MP3s were more convenient. While mini-discs gained niche popularity in Japan and among audiophiles, they never broke into the mainstream. By the mid-2000s, the format was discontinued, remembered as Sony's over-engineered answer to a question nobody asked. But when overpriced discs failed, could a horror movie mask that electrocuted your face really count as self-care?
Because in essence, rejuvenating does for the face what exercise does for the body.
If horror movies and late-night infomercials had a love child, it would look exactly like the Rejuvenique facial mask. Launched in the late 1990s, this device promised to tighten facial muscles and reduce wrinkles by delivering electrical stimulation to the skin. The mask, hard plastic with eye, nose, and mouth cutouts, resembled something straight out of a slasher film. Users reported uncomfortable zapping sensations rather than any real beauty benefits. Dermatologists were skeptical from the start, warning that it was more gimmick than science. Despite heavy advertising, consumers weren't willing to strap on a terrifying electric mask night after night. Sales fizzled quickly, and the product became a cult oddity. Today, it's mostly remembered as a nightmare fuel disguised as skincare innovation.
GLH means great-looking hair. Just spray GLH on and it instantly covers your bald spot.
Balding men of the 90s were sold a miracle in aerosol form. Spray-on hair, often pitched in cheesy late-night commercials. The product claimed to instantly cover thinning spots by spraying colored fibers onto the scalp, creating the illusion of thicker hair. The reality was far less glamorous. The hair looked like flaky paint, transferred onto pillows or clothing, and washed away with the slightest hint of rain or sweat. Worse, the application often left users looking like they'd dipped their heads in shoe polish. While it generated short-lived buzz, it quickly became a cultural punchline, mocked on talk shows and comedy sketches. Instead of solving baldness, it cemented itself as one of the most laughable personal care gimmicks of the decade.